All right, guys. So we're talking about one of my favorite things to talk about, which is policy today. Okay. And this policy that has been passed by the House Democrats, known as HR1, the so-called For the People Act, is a Republican's worst nightmare in terms of policy. Because I'm telling you guys, if this policy from the Democrats, if they can pass this, which it looks like there's not a good chance they'll be able to do it as is right now, but if they can pass this in the Senate eventually, it is over for the GOP. It is over, okay, in terms of the GOP being able to win elections, especially national elections. Now, don't get me wrong, some deep red districts will be fine, right? But a lot of the purple districts, a lot of these blue areas, and a lot of these red states are going to be way more powerful, right? They're going to have way more votes, okay? And in states like Georgia, Texas, Florida, Arizona, right? These battleground states, that is going to be a big deal, okay? And it could flip all those states blue long term, okay? And the Democrats, guys, have been playing the long game when it comes to stuff anyways. It's like I've told you guys a ton of times on my channel, the Democrats are thinking about 2040, right? That's why they're working so hard for the Hispanic vote. That's why they're crafting legislation around giving illegal immigrants citizenship, right? They want them to vote, right? It's an easy way for Democrats to get easy voters. They're also thinking about LGBTQ. Okay, how 15% of generation, I think, X, that's born between 1997 and 2003, how they identify as LGBTQ. Okay, the Democrats have people moving from liberal cities like New York and LA to red states like Georgia, the Atlanta area, Arizona, to Texas, moving their populations there. And that has happened a lot more rapidly than it normally would because of the pandemic. The Democrats are literally laying the groundwork to basically stay in power for a long, long time. And I'm talking about long time, okay? And this is currently what the GOP has to deal with. And this piece of legislation right here would be the icing on the cake. It would be the nail in the coffin. Right? So this legislation, which is called HR1, the For the People Act, basically is a big government power grab, borderline, probably definitely unconstitutional, right? In terms of states' rights, in terms of the federal government interfering in how states run their elections. This piece of legislation right here has provisions in it that will allow big government, the federal government, to basically control state elections. Okay, so let's read some of the key takeaways and the provisions in this piece of legislation, right? So you have federal control over congressional elections. The bill begins by declaring that Congress finds that it has broad authority to regulate the time, place, and manner of congressional elections under the Elections Clause of the Constitution. The Constitution actually gives primary authority to the states, but allows Congress to make or alter such regulations. The House Democrats interpret this provision as dramatically as possible to override the states. So first of all, basically what it does is that it declares that big government has the right to dictate how states conduct their elections. So it also declares that states and localities have eroded access to the right to vote. The bill declares photo ID burdensome, voter registration procedures, purges of ineligible voters, restrictions on vote by mail, rules against felon voting, and other measures the states and municipalities have taken to guarantee the integrity of elections are in fact restrictions on the right to vote. It also suggests that these are forms of racial discrimination and systemic racism. So again, they're pulling a race card here. They're pulling out all the stops in this bill. Basically, they're saying that voter ID laws, common sense laws, are racist. We've all heard this story before, how black folks can't get an ID. They can't get an ID to vote. Okay, guys, I mean, you know, a lot of the liberals complain about the hoops that black people got to jump through to vote. Honestly, as a black person, I've never had one issue voting any day in my life. I've had no issues. The only thing that is annoying is having to be registered in a certain municipality, right? That's the only thing that's annoying. But other than that, it really comes down to how lazy I am about it, right? This stuff is very easy. So some of the more concrete policy provisions in here is automatic and online voter registration, right? It requires that every state make sure all eligible citizens are registered to vote in elections for federal office unless individuals opt out. It also requires state to make voter registration online. It has protections for illegal aliens who are registered to vote. It allows you to change your personal information at voting places. It has same-day voter registration. It prevents states from purging ineligible voters from rolls. It has automatic registration for minors under 18. Basically, once you turn 16, you're automatically registered to vote. Okay, which is basically one step away from having 16-year-olds vote, right? It has mandatory early voting, right, in which it is requiring that early voting must begin no later than 15 days before the election, right? So it has that in there. National vote by mail without photo ID. It have that in there. Unlimited ballot harvesting. Okay, that's in there. Allowing 10 days for ballots to be accepted after election day. Gutting photo ID requirements, right? So as you can see here, these are some of the provisions that are in this bill. And essentially what the Democrats are doing is that they're trying to make it so it is as easy as possible for as many people as possible to vote. Okay? And this is important. This is important. And the reason why it's important is because the Democrats believe that they have a majority in this country. Now, again, you know, if you look at the national polling in terms of the popular vote, I mean, the Democrats have won like 7 of the last 8 presidential general election, okay, by popular vote. So they're probably right? They probably do have the majority in this country. With that being said, as you make it as easy as possible for people to register, you make it as easy as possible for them to vote. Basically, it's a numbers game at that point. You have a numbers game in which a lot of states like Georgia, Florida, Texas, Arizona, having those extra people vote, okay, show up in those blue districts, could tip the scales in favor of the Democrats, right? In which if you get a state like Texas that happens to flip blue, it's over, right? It's over. There's no way that the GOP could ever win a national election if a state like Texas flips blue. So keep in mind, guys, this is the strategy for the Democrats. The Democrat strategy is to basically make it as easy as possible to vote while also pandering to those they feel like is going to be the majority in this country. Okay? That is the Democrat strategy, right? And also, along with that, you also have a ton of people who are moving from liberal states to Republican states, right? Red states like Georgia, Texas, Arizona, swing states, right? And this is a problem for the GOP. This is a huge problem for the GOP. It's such a big problem that, quite honestly, guys, the GOP has to win in 2022. That's also part of the reason why the Republicans basically decided to continue to roll with Trump, right? That's part of the reason why. The reason why is because they know that they cannot afford to go through a breakup with Trump when they're literally this piece of legislation away from never having a majority in this country again, right? So they need Trump more than ever. And the GOP needs to win 2022 more than ever. Because if they don't win in 2022, if the Democrats gain more seats, particularly in the Senate, what'll happen is that they may now have enough people to eliminate the filibuster. And the Democrats, the progressives, have already been screaming for eliminating the filibuster. Okay? But there's certain Democrats like Joe Manchin who has decided that they want to continue to preserve the filibuster because it protects the minority party. Joe Manchin is thinking about the future. He's thinking about how the pendulum swings both ways in politics. But the progressives are not thinking about that. They're thinking about the here and now. They want to go for the knockout blow. And I do believe that the Democrats will try to get rid of the filibuster come 2022 if they win more seats in the Senate and the House. They will try to eliminate it. And the reason why it's so important is because the only thing that's keeping this piece of legislation from passing is the filibuster. That's it. And it's funny how this goes because, you know, Mitch McConnell eliminated the filibuster in 2017 for Supreme Court nominees, right? He eliminated filibuster so that you just need a simple majority vote. It couldn't be blocked. He eliminated it. After using it against the Democrats, he went and eliminated it. And because he eliminated it, we got Brett Kavanaugh and Neil Gorsuch. But it's funny because it seems like the pendulum might swing back the other way. If the GOP doesn't get its act together by 2022, because if the Democrats eliminate the filibuster for regular legislation like this piece of legislation, this HR1 will be passed. The Democrats already tried to pass it before during the Trump administration. I think back in 2018 or 2019, last time they won. But it never got to the Senate floor because of McConnell. Now they're trying it again. And what happens, guys, in politics, the priorities of the party is shown by the legislation that they pass in their respective congressional chambers when they have the majority. That tells you what the agenda is. The agenda for the Democrats is to make sure that Republicans can never win another election again. That's what it's about. So the Republicans really got to win in 2022. Because if they don't, I do believe that the Democrats will try to eliminate the filibuster at that point. They're not going to do it now. They're not going to do it now because they probably don't have the votes. And this piece of legislation probably won't pass the Senate. But this is a declaration from the Democrats that we coming for your ass. Right? That's what they're basically telling the GOP. So it is imperative that the GOP wins in 2022. I'm telling you. Because if this thing passes, it's over. It's done. Okay? So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.